Please join me in 合唱。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。ナモアミダ仏。元にいじむごよぜんみょ無よとしゃ日がまに主公園よ開心のんて有脈樹木如来予言朝鮮無林小学大四ゴール実法開門精進三昧知恵意徳無量中小慶右人体前年小文法会愚人人の空語 ぬせそんよむ人のしし人徳無量空君古代知恵人名光明意祖神道大仙願がサブ在所法可動生じ未不下断不正上位解任精進行税三昧知恵以上合成特部奉行志願一切空空一茶大安慶始有部百千の熊無料大小収入五者供養一切死と勝負不尿愚道検証不逆異尿五者勝負世界無不影無種鮮度光明師匠変師匠国尿税精進異人難量両が三部国土第一五種奇妙道場超絶国尿内容二無闘争ガト愛民道断日祭実法来生新年少女伊藤学校下落安穏公文神妙税が新書本願の日力少々欲実法生存知恵無下上領子孫知が信行軽量心死食読中画行精進忍術系ナマンナブナマンナブナマンナブナマンナブナマンナブナマンナブ何にしく毒平等性一切道もない心往生南無阿弥陀仏。 Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Naman Naus, Naman Naus, Naman Naus, Naman Naus, Naman Naus, Naman Naus.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. I'd like to wish you a Happy New Year as we welcome in 2021. Hopefully, this year we'll have uh, a much brighter year to come. And so I'd like to say hello. Actually, this is my first time in welcoming in the new year with everyone here. So I'm very looking forward to that as well. So I'd like to introduce you today to a Jataka tale. I wonder how many people here know what a Jataka tale is. Um, do you know what okay, wait, I guess it's too much for me to just scroll through all the windows here. Anyway, Jataka tale is a legendary story about Shakyamuni Buddha's previous lives, okay, before he attained enlightenment in his life as the Buddha. So in his previous lives, what are the lives that he led? And so these are kind of moralistic stories that are introduced. And so he takes on a lot of different life forms, okay? And so one I'd like to introduce you today is the story of the Sarabha, okay? And the Sarabha, if you don't know what that is, it's okay. I didn't either. I had to look it up. Sarabha is a legendary creature in the Hindu mythology, and it is a part lion and part bird beast. Okay, so it's a weird creature. And according to Sanskrit literature, this creature is eight-legged and more powerful than a lion or an elephant. Okay, and it possesses the ability to clear a valley in one jump. So, pew, and jumps over the whole entire valley. Okay, this is the legendary Sarabha. Okay, so if you can imagine that this Sarabha lives deep in a forest, and no one is ever able to see this creature. It's kind of like the leprechaun or something like that, right? You can never see this sarabha. And they say that if you're very quiet and still in the night, it is said that one can hear the voice of the sarabha coming from the depths of the forest. Okay, so one day this took place a long, long time ago in ancient history. There was a king who was hunting in the forest, and the king came across one of these sarabhas, okay? And he says, wow, what a beautiful creature. This is such a nice, majestic creature. But the sarabha left as soon as he saw that he was being spotted by the king. And so the king said, I'm going to catch this sarabha and make him my pet, right? So he cannot escape from me. So he goes and chases after this sarabha, and he gets onto his horse and he chases after this creature, and he goes deep into the forest, and he tries to shoot arrows at it. He tries to throw things at it to try to get the sarabha to stop, but he does not succeed. And he's running and running, and he goes deeper and deeper into the woods. And soon enough, he loses his entourage. The king loses all the people that he came with, right? So it's just now him and this sarabha, and he's so focused on chasing this sarabha and trying to get this creature. And he runs faster and faster. And he runs so fast, in fact, that up ahead, there is this huge chasm, this huge crevice, this huge hole, okay? And the sarabha, because it can jump and clear valleys, right? And one little leap, it goes right over the crevice, no problem, right? And then keeps running. And then the king is so focused on chasing after this sarabha that he doesn't notice this hole. But the horse does, right? The horse is like, whoa, and then he stops all of a sudden. And so the king is flown over the horse and goes into the hole, and he goes into the hole and injures himself down that hole. And so the sarabha noticed that he wasn't being chased anymore. As he looked back, he realized he wasn't being chased. So then he goes back to see what happened, and he sees that the horse is kind of walking around that hole, not knowing what to do. He goes back and he sees that the king is all alone, and that if he was left alone, he would probably die in that hole. So the Sarabha went inside to the chasm, and he said to the king, who is kind of in pain and in crying, he says, don't be afraid. I'm not someone who's going to harm you. I drink the same water you do, and I drink the same food that you do. I will bring you out of this chasm, out of this hole. Trust me, and I will get you out of here. And the king looked up at the Sarabha and he says, I can't believe this. Formerly I was your enemy. I was trying to chase you and capture you, make you my pet. But now you're helping me. Why are you helping me? And so the Sarabha now knew that the king trusts him and loved him. So then he took the king on his back and leaps out of the hole, right? And he's great and stronger than an elephant and a lion. So he was able to bring the king out of the hole with no problem. And so the Sarabha, or the king, says to this creature, how can I thank you? Everything I own is yours. My palace, my country, everything. Take it. It's all yours. Please come back with me to the palace because other hunters will come to kill you. And so the Sarabha says, this forest is my palace. I live here. So I will not go with you. But if there's something that you can do for me in return, please don't hunt in the forest and kill these animals who are trying to live here happily and freely. So the king gave his promise and returned home to the palace. And when he returned home, he made a decree not to allow anyone to hunt in the forest any longer. And so the king and his people and the living animals in the forest lived happily ever after. And that is the story of a Jataka tale. So here we have a story about a creature who was hunted by the king and is now put in a position to save the king from harm. And even though the king meant to do harm to the Sarabha by capturing him, when the tables turned around, the Sarabha was in a position to help the king. And even though the king was the aggressor. And after helping the king repaid the Sarabha by agreeing never to hunt in the forest. So the Sarabha learns how to become forgiving and compassionate towards other beings who may not be so nice to him. In learning this, the Sarabha also then teaches us about the importance of forgiving others and helping others as well. Can you think back to a time when someone was mean to you or did something mean to you? How did you treat that person back? If you treated that person back negatively, did that help to make the situation better? Or did it make it worse? If you treated that person back positively, like the Sarabha in this story, did that help to make the situation better? Many times it's very hard to find it in our hearts to be patient, nice, or helpful with people who are mean to us. It seems to take a lot of strength and courage within our hearts to be able to be nice or helpful to these people. But as the Buddha teaches, when we fight hatred with hatred, anger with anger, or ignorance with ignorance, the only thing we do is prolong the suffering between those who are involved. Wouldn't it be much nicer to live, if we can, to find a way that'll settle these matters once and for all? This kind of solution can only be found when we take it upon ourselves to give love, to have patience, forgiveness, care, and compassion. So let us remember the story of the Sarabha next time we find ourselves in a situation where we can show our kindness towards others who are not so nice to us. Okay, so I would like to end on that note. Thank you very much. Please join me in Dasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Difficult is it to receive a human form. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Dharma of the Buddha. Now we hear it. If we do not cross over to the truth in the present life, in what life shall we cross over? Let us with sincerity and true reverence take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we together with all sentient beings awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of Amida Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we together with all sentient beings enter the storehouse of the Dharma, becoming like the wisdom ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we together with all sentient beings become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The peerless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds and thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Okay, I'd like to recite the Japanese, which is on page 7 or on your screen as well. 人参受けがたし今すでに行く仏法聞きがたし今すでに聞く好み根性に向かってどせずんばさらにいずれの章に向かってか好みをどせん大衆もろともに指針に参謀に帰依し立て祀るべし自ら仏に帰依し立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに大道を体現して無常意を起こさん自ら法に帰依し立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに深く胸像に入りて知恵海のごとくならん自ら僧に帰依し立て祀るまさに願わくば主情とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならん無常人人未明の方は百千万号にも愛用ことがたし我今検問し授事することを得たり願わくは如来の真実義を下し立て祀らんナマンダナマンダスナマンダスナマンダスナマンダスナマンダスIf, when I attain Buddhahood, the sentient beings of the 10 quarters who, with sincere and entrusting heart, aspire to be born in my land and say my name even 10 times, should not be born there, may I not attain the perfect enlightenment. Excluded are those who commit the 5 grave offenses and those who slander the right Dharma, the 18th vow of the larger sutra. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Morning, everyone. Happy New Year once again. This time of year, everybody starts talking about these New Year's resolution, right? So I wonder what your New Year's resolution is. Some people choose to get up earlier in the morning. I've chosen to do that. Some people go on a diet. I've chosen to do that as well. Some people decide they will exercise more. I've chosen to do that as well. Others might say that they will spend more time with their families, and I've chosen to do that as well. So there's all kinds of high hopes that we have for ourselves during this time, and I will try to be sure to follow through. But unfortunately, if you're like me, New Year's resolutions never last too long. As a matter of fact, I wonder when they're ever really successful. Uh, why do you think that things don't last for a long time? I think one of the main reasons is because we stop talking about resolutions maybe after a few weeks, right? In fact, have you ever heard of someone saying that they're maintaining their New Year's resolution sometime in November, right? Not really. We don't really hear about that. We would actually kind of think that that person was a little bit weird if they did so, right? What about promises then? Have you ever made a promise to someone? Are you still keeping it, or have you ever broken that? Think back to elementary school, or when you made a promise as a child, or in the Scouts. The Scouts have what's called the 12 points of the Scout Law. I think I've broken every single one of those, probably every day of my life. Right? Or what about the Pledge of Allegiance? Right? What about being a U.S. citizen and your civic duties? All of these things are promises that you are making to abide by or observe certain behavioral traits. It is a sort of social contract of sorts. Do you really observe these all of the time and fully? As you may already know, promises are very hard to keep. Why? Maybe it's because promises are too demanding, or they ask too much of us. Some might argue that the commitment is too big in order to make a certain promise. Others might argue that there are so many other responsibilities and tasks that are required of us each and every day that it's almost impossible to keep track of one promise all of the time. This would make someone seem like he or she is obsessed, right? If that person tried really, really hard to uphold one specific promise. Shinran Shonin, the founder of our school of Buddhism, addresses the very reason why it's difficult for us to carry out promises. He explains that the reason we cannot ever fully commit to keeping a promise is because we have difficulty overcoming our attachments, which he calls blind passions. Promises are commitments. They require that we match up to a certain standard. And more often than not, even the simplest of promises can be extremely difficult to keep over time because we have to prioritize that promise over our needs and wants. I'd like to give you an example of this. Have you ever compared yourself to someone you thought was better than you in something, right? Let's say someone is better looking than you, right? So this person is taller, leaner, more in shape, has a smile that lights up the room, right? Is cut, right? Or I'm a guy, so the guys, we look at these things, right? Or dresses more nicely than you do, or is more confident, right? And every damn time he walks in the room, pretty Jennifer gets all chitty chatty. But when I'm in the room, all of a sudden she gets like into this expressionless robot, right? No, I do not like to eat dinner. I don't care to watch movies, right? But our blind passions, right? Shinran is explaining that they make us envious, jealous, angry when we don't get things that we want, sad when we don't have the things that go our way, or frustrated, right? It's blind passions that create our suffering, not only for ourselves, but onto others as well. Shinran states in one of his letters a very famous phrase, a very famous quote, and it states, "Our desires are countless, and anger, wrath, jealousy, and envy are overwhelming, arising without pause. To the very last moment of life, they do not cease or disappear or exhaust themselves. Bonbu to you wa mumyo, bon no warera ga mi ni michi michi te, yoku omoku, ikari, haradachi, sonemi, netamu kokoro oku, hima naku shite, rinju no ichinen ni itaru made todomarazu, kiezu." That's how he says it in Japanese. He explains that our blind passions will not go away until the last moment of our lives, when we draw our last breath. Blind passions are here to stay. So we must find a way to overcome them, not eradicate them, but overcome them. So in the example that I gave you about being jealous of another person, if you constantly try to compare yourself and try to match up to Mr. Rico Suave or Miss Flowy Hair so-and-so, you will always be trying to make yourself something that you are not. Consequently, you will stress yourself out, place unrealistic demands on yourself, and kill yourself, right? Trying to be something you're not. More specifically, you'll always be trying to make yourself match an unrealistic standard when really It is simply the outlook of yourself that needs to change. You are fine the way you are. But to understand that, we have to first understand that we are human beings with imperfections. We make mistakes. We hurt others unknowingly or unintentionally. We mean well, but we often come up short on our commitments and our promises. And because we can come to terms with being human, right? In other words, in our imperfect selves. And when we embrace that, we then can come to understand that we are okay without forcing ourselves to be something that we are not. Our faults and shortcomings are part of who makes us, us. Shinran Shonin awakened to a reality which adopted everyone, which accepted everyone for who they are. That reality is the compassionate working of Amida Buddha, the boat of the Buddha that takes us to the other shore. In Buddhism, particularly Mahayana Buddhism, which we are a part of, a promise which is known as making a vow is a very important concept. You know, the vow that I read at the very beginning of this whole is the 18th vow of Amida Buddha. All bodhisattvas who are Buddhas in training must make these certain vows, right, before they become Buddha. And Amida Buddha similarly promises or vows that all sentient beings will have a path to spiritual liberation despite our blind passions. Amida completed this promise, unlike human beings, right? Guaranteeing that we will be brought to emancipation. I can't even keep a promise like a New Year's resolution for 2 weeks, let alone all eternity. But Amida Buddha's working is endless. It is limitless. It applies to all sentient beings throughout time. And this is why, from a Jodo Shinshu perspective, no human being can ever become a Buddha while remaining human. And the promise that Amida Buddha makes is called the primal vow, or the 18th vow. It is the most crucial vow in our tradition. So like the Juseige, right? We chant this very often, but the Juseige is basically a digest of all of the vows and explaining the most important ones and the importance of those. When we encounter this working then, our blind passions no longer become hindrances or things that we need to get rid of. Blind passions now become reminders, in fact, that we are embraced by Amida Buddha and accepted for who we are. Further, our blind passions show us that all sentient beings are struggling just the same. We struggle to make ends meet. We struggle to keep it together, right? We struggle to get through the day. We struggle to find our voices, our identities, our reasons to live, etc., etc. Amida's working allows us then to awaken to this solidarity of humanity, right? This universal oneness, because we all have these blind passions. And as sentient beings of blind passions, we are all in the same boat together. And when we understand that, we become less combative with each other. We become less confrontational and arrogant in front of others. And instead of that, we grow more humble in front of others. We grow more understanding of others, and we grow more accepting of those around us and of ourselves. And this is the powerful teaching of Amida Buddha. Amida's primal vow embraces us for who we are, just as we are. And because of Amida Buddha's primal vow, our outlook changes. And so when we go into society with these social issues such as racial injustice, the inequity between the rich and the poor, right? The have and the have-nots, we look at them differently. We look at the situation with more compassion, with more of this feeling of wanting to cooperate and be positive contributors to people in this society. And Amida Buddha's primal vow gives us that strength and that confidence. And so with that, I would like to end today's talk. Thank you very much. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandas, 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 namandas. Namandas, namandas, namandas. 浄土真宗の生活信条、一つ御仏の誓いを信じ、尊い皆を唱えつつ、強く明るく生き抜きます。一つ御仏の光を仰ぎ、常に我が身を顧みて、感謝のうちに励みます。一つ御仏の教えに従い、正しい道を聞き分けて、誠の実りを広めます。一つ御仏の恵みを喜び、互いに敬い助け合い、社会のために尽くします。何万ダウス、何万ダウス、何万ダウス、何万ダウス。何万ダウス。皆さん、新年明けましておめでとうございます。今年もどうぞよろしくお願いいたします。近頃、アメリカでは、次のような表現をよく耳にすることがあります。それは、何々さんのお葬式の時に、何々さんの、幸福だった、人生をお祝いさせていただきましょうというものです。また、ある、YouTube でビデオを検索して、ビデオを見てたら、お葬式の時に、家族がまるでパーティーをしているかのように、大きな音量で音楽を流し、賑やかな雰囲気を出そうとして、何々さんは、きっとこのように、してほしかったんでしょうと言っていました。別れた、人との楽しい思い出を大切にしたい気持ちはわからない、ではないのですが、その最後の別れをパーティーのようにするのはいかがなもの、でしょう。死というものに対して誠実に向き合わなければ、かえって生がわからなくなるのではないでしょうか。時々刻々常に生と死が伴うというのが仏教の教えであります。死がなければ生というものが分かりません。この人たちにとってお葬式で泣くというのは良くないとでも思っているのでしょうか。私はまだ小さかった時、男は泣かないもんだ。とよく言われてたんですけれども、しかし、今になって考えてみれば、泣けない人は、かえって人ではないかと思います。人生の本当の大切さ、ありがたさが心から分かれば、泣かないことはないでしょう。そこに念仏の教えに重要な意義が現れるのであります。親鸞様は、よく信心という言葉を使われます。これは英語では entrustment というように訳しております。宗祖の書物には信心について喜び、これはこの普通の喜びではなくてですね、形容の形、喜び、難しい方の漢字ですけれども、この喜びや幸いなどという言葉で、説明されます。例えば、信心をいただいて、歓喜、愉約、歓喜っていうのは喜びですね。で、愉約はダンスですね。踊るということですけれども、歓喜、愉約、つまり喜びの、あまりその場で踊り出すと表現されています。しかし、他のところでは恥ずかしい、あるいは悲しいなどで信心を説明されることもあります。つまり、自分の愚かさに気づかされ、悲しく恥ずかしく感じるということです。涙を流さずに、済まない人生があるのだとされるのです。要するに、パーフェクトな人間になれない自分ではあるが、だからこそ阿弥陀様に抱かれているのだということを言われるのです。その喜びと恥ずかしさが伴ってちょうどいいバランスのある気づきが信心だと親鸞様が説明されるのであります。つまり、光の大地。これは、英語ではプラットフォームです。あるいはプラトー、あるいは、プレインですね。フィールドのつもりで、この大地という言葉を使っているんですけれども、光の大地で、立つのであります。でそしてそこで南無阿弥陀仏というお念仏が声となって出て、自分の力で今までわからなかった生と死、生死に対する安心を与えていただいてありがとうございます。 というのがその意味になるのです。喜びの涙と恥ずかしさの涙で、ただお念仏しかできないのだという姿です。現在の社会、特に西洋社会では楽しくない、面白くない、ポジティブじゃないものを拒否する傾向があるのではないでしょうか。私の友達の中でもネガティブなものはできるだけ避けているなどとよく言いますが、しかし一日中常に笑顔でおられるのはまず無理でしょう。シャクソンが教えてくださった中道と同じく、親鸞様も、人生のバランスというものに重点を置かれたのであります。これがお念仏の教えであり、そしてこれを通して私たちは人生に対して現実的に向き合えることができ、また、自我というものに対してでも、誠実になれるのであります。皆さん本日はようこそのお参りでございました。Happy New Year! Thank you very much.